this is a variation of the Budapest Gambit. In my opinion, it's quite aggressive, quite interesting, and you will create a lot of damages and pressure to your opponent, even though he is prepared. So this opening has reputation of being a tricks-only opening, but I think it's unfair, because for 2,000 players or 2,400, 2,200, I think it's completely playable. Of course, if you're playing with the top 100 players, of course, probably not. But talking about the evaluations of the Stockfish or Liren or another engine, the evaluation is 0.3 or 0.4 for whites, sometimes 0.7, but no more than that. So for me, it's completely playable. So first we will talk a little bit about the origins of the name, and then we will jump to the 5 most played variations, and with always the percentages of the chess base and opening tree. So let's jump to our video. Well, when we talk about this opening, this gambit, we need to think a little bit. Who was Fajarowicz? Well, this guy was German, and he died with just 32 years old. It's a shame. He was one of the victims of the Nazi movement, and he died on a Jewish hospital with tuberculosis with 32 years old. Is just a shame. So talking about his official games, I think he has 7 or 8 official games. He won the most games, and he played this gambit we will see next. So it's a shame, because with the Nazi movements, I don't know the pronunciation, he wasn't able of playing chess. And when this happens, it's a shame, because we lost lots of very good material about a chess player that we never saw. So it's a shame. So let's see this gambit. So this gambit is played with black, as we already saw, and well, this is the resulting position. So this starts with d4, knight f6, and after c4 we will play e5. This is the Budapest Gambit. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that the Budapest continues with the knight to g4, and the Fajarowicz continues with knight e4. Talking about the positional evaluation, yes, the Budapest probably is better than the Fajarowicz. But the thing is that against an unprepared player, you will create a lot of damages, because the kind of plans that you have with the Fajarowicz is different, because when you play the knight to e4, you're creating pressure to the f2 pawn, and you're creating pressure to this diagonal too, because of the bishop check. So because of that, we have a lot of different traps. So first we will, just to remember, the first column is the chess base evaluation, and the second column is the opening tree evaluation. As you're seeing here below, they are quite different. Why is that? Well, probably because of the time controls. So when we analyze, for example, the games of the opening tree, they are mostly rapid or blitz games. And as you are seeing, the percentages aren't so high for white. So it's completely playable. But when we talk about classical games, it's more complicated, because most players have high ratings, and of course, if black fails, white will win the game. So for this reason, of course, this is a risky opening. So this should be played by aggressive players that don't need to play positional and love to play tactical games, giving up material and playing for the checkmate. I like to play this kind of stuff, so even though I lose the game, I prefer to lose happy than to win and be sad the rest of the day. I don't know, but well, it's my mindset. So let's look to our first variant. But before that, did you know that almost 87% of the viewers isn't subscribed? Still, almost 1 month and a half later, we have still 87% of the viewers, and I need your help because we are working a lot to create the best we can, and our goal is to help you to improve and help you to reach your goals. So to do that, you just need to help us. It's free. So you just need to subscribe, and if you enjoy the content, please push the like button. So this will help a lot this channel with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, if you want to receive all the content, you can always push the notifications on. Any critiques or any suggestion, you can always put on the comments or talk directly with me by chess.com. My nickname is dark_attack. So let's go to our first variant. And well, when we talk about these variants, we need to think a little bit and decide what is more probable to happen. In my opinion, on blitz games, probably a3 will not happen very often. Probably most players will play knight f3. But well, this order is the chess base order. So on classical games, mostly they play a3. And here I will recommend always the approach of d6. Why is that? Because we want to have the initiative, because we are playing a gambit. And okay, let's see all of this stuff. First approach, f3 is a blunder. It's a very big blunder because you have queen h4 and the king cannot go anywhere. So after g3, of course, we will take with the knight. And this game is already won for black because after pawn takes, queen takes, and we won 2 points. So this is already superior for white. So first line, this doesn't work for white. So talking about another idea, for example, pawn takes. Here on this Fajarowicz Gambit, when we play d6, if white takes, you will be on all the variants, you will be always happy, okay? Because after pawn takes, you will take always with the bishop. And here exists two kinds of blunders. It exists two blunders. The idea is the same, and this happens a lot on blitz and rapid games. I've already won several times on the internet, on chess.com. So first blunder, knight f3. Knight f3 looks very normal, but it isn't, because here you have a trap. You have a tactical move. So you will play knight takes f2, and after king takes, you will sack your bishop. So why is that so good? Because now the queen can take the queen. So after pawn takes or king takes, queen takes queen gives advantage for black. So this is decisive. So this is completely won for black. So another way of losing the game with white is just playing, for example, g3. It's the same idea. You will sack the knight, and after king takes, the bishop can take the pawn. So again, this is terrible for white because we will win the queen. So very, very bad. Talking about this continuation, here white can continue with another approach. For example, we can continue with probably e3 or, I don't know, maybe something different, but well, knight d2, it's playable. I was thinking a little bit because I was thinking about the most common way of continuing that. And well, here you can continue as you want because you're losing by 1 point, but you have won the initiative and you have more tempos. You're more developed. So here, for example, you can continue with bishop f5, queen e7. For example, queen e7 is very easy because after knight takes, queen takes, and for example, queen d3 to try to exchange material. And you don't need to be afraid because you can play bishop f5, f5, queen g6, everything works. Probably bishop f5 is more normal. And if white tries to exchange everything, for example, this kind of stuff, you can play with any problems to the endgame because you have the pair of bishops, but and your opponent has too. But the thing is that he is underdeveloped. So because of that, you will break the center and you will try to create damages and problems to your opponents. After pawn takes, bishop takes, we are playing a completely equal position. So it's interesting. So about these lines of pawn takes, I think everything is interesting for black. Sometimes if white plays correctly, you will need to play for the endgame. Yes, you will be losing by 1 point, but the thing is that you're leading on the development. So probably you're thinking about what if the pawn doesn't take? For example, queen c2, this kind of approach. Yes, it's more complicated if the queen plays to c2, but in my opinion, this is completely playable for black. Again, you will want to play for the tricks. So after, for example, here, bishop f5 looks interesting because you're trying to take f2, and when you play that, you will attack the queen. So here, talking about the positional evaluation by the computers enjoy the white's position, but in my opinion, just the top players will win with white, because after, for example, knight c3, it's the best approach for white. We will sack the knight with any problems. And the thing is that, of course, the bishop is attacking the queen, and we are threatening to take the rook, and we will take the rook. After, for example, queen takes, knight takes, here, talking about the positional evaluation, yes, white is winning, but for now we are winning by 2 points. So the best approach is to play g3. And okay, after g3, we can always sack the knight and the material will be even. The thing is that we've lost the development, and for this reason, the computers enjoy the white's position. But in my opinion, yeah, you can play this with knight c6, and okay, knight f3 probably is the best move, and we can continue with something. For example, pawn takes, and knight takes, queen takes, and we continue this position. After queen takes, bishop takes, in my opinion, this position is completely playable for black, and we will not lose material because if we suffer a little bit, we give up the knight for the pawn because we are winning by 2 points. So for me, we don't need to be afraid of that. Talking still about this kind of lines, of course, white can continue a slightly different way. For example, here, white can continue with e4 to try to complicate the game and to try to not to lose the rook. In my opinion, here you can take with the knight the pawn. Of course, the computers like that, but we are humans, and in my opinion, it's very complicated to play the variation of knight takes rook. So for this reason, I prefer to take the pawn with the knight. And you're thinking, oh, but you're going to lose material. Yes and no, because here we have queen to h4, and we will win the piece back. So for this reason, in my opinion, this is easier, because imagine if this happens, this is a mistake. because queen takes is a check, and we are talking about the entering of the witch. So after queen takes, bishop takes, this is very complicated. Black is completely won. So for this reason, in my opinion, this variation probably is easier to play by black. So we've already saw the first variation with a3. Of course, if you want me to create another video about each of these variations in detail, please tell me something on the comments, because I need to know. So let's go to our next variation. Our next variation is this one. So it's a variation with knight f3. Again, we have several interesting stuff and lines here, and here I will defend two different approaches. One is b6 and the other is d6. The lines with d6, you already know. The material is similar to the last variation. We will see quickly, but the ideas are the same. But this line with b6 is very interesting. It's a dubious approach. The computers don't enjoy, but it's something like 1 point for white. But the thing is that I already lost with violence a game with white playing against this variation, and I never forgotten, because of course, in my opinion, the most dynamic players, everyone will play the same. They will play queen to d5 because the queen attacks the rook. And here I will defend a very beautiful trap. So we will continue with bishop b7. And of course, I think most players will take the bishop with the queen, and it's a free piece. And here, black will continue with knight c6. And here, talking about the evaluation, this is something like 1 point for white. But the thing is that most players will continue, for example, with queen a6, because of problems with knight b4, for example, trying to win the rook. So after queen a6, here we will continue with bishop check, and this will be a tragedy for white, because after, for example, bishop, we will play knight c5, and the queen doesn't have enough squares, because after queen plays to b5, we will play bishop takes, knight takes, and a6. This is too complicated because we will win material. The queen is lost. Here you can think about another approach, something like, for example, here bishop can take and bring to survive with the queen. But yeah, it isn't playable because the knight will take the queen and you're winning by material. So this line is complicated for white. Of course, here against b6, queen and bishop, you can take, and the secret to survive to this position with white is just to play a move that I think isn't natural. So you will want to play knight c3. No one will play that. In my opinion, no one will play that. So, because no one is expecting you to play the Fajarowicz Gambit. Of course, this is a good gambit to play once or twice. You don't want to be always playing the same thing, because this will make your opponent to prepare. So you want to be always changing and playing different kinds of lines. The aggressive players and the dynamic players normally do that, because if your opponent prepares, you will have very big problems. So talking about this line, I think it's interesting, but if you want, you can play to the d6 approach. So again, if white takes, we will create a lot of problems. Again, g3 is a very big blunder, because, do you remember? We will sack the knight and we will sack the bishop, and then queen will take the queen. So this is very problematic. So talking about the correct approach, probably here I don't know, probably this is similar to the last variation, so probably we don't need to see the capture. But yes, you can see, for example, different approaches, like Queen C2, it's completely playable again, and I will defend again this kind of stuff. So it's similar to the last variation. So talking about the A3 and knight F3, as you saw, you can play the D6 approach, and the difference is that against knight F3, you can play a different trap. You can play with B6. Now let's go with knight D2. Knight D2 is a most positional approach, and it's interesting too. On the internet, I already played a lot of times knight sax, but yes, this isn't good. So I will defend here the approach of bishop b4. Why is that? Because you need to maintain the initiative, you want to be leading on the development, and you want to pin the knight. Why is that? Because, for example, after a3, I think is a normal move, we will continue with bishop takes, and after that we will continue with the approach of d6. Again, if white takes, we will be happy. Why is that? Because we will take with the queen. And after, for example, knight plays to f3, we will continue with knight, and we are leading on the development. So here, after castle queen side, black doesn't have any problems. In my opinion, black has a superior game. So for this reason, this is, in my opinion, beautiful for black. So talking about alternatives, well, here we can see, for example, bishop f4. Instead of taking the d6 pawn, the white can continue playing positional. And okay, we will need again to play to the endgame. We will be losing on material, but the position is completely normal. So after castle kingside, here, of course, if pawn takes, we don't need to be afraid again, because we will play queen f6. We are threatening to give checkmate if he plays badly, of course. Bishop here, this is terrible. This is very, very wrong. And if bishop plays to g3, black is, well, for example, we can take because the knight is protecting. And if white tries to win material, yeah, knight takes, pawn takes, and yes, this pawn isn't good, but this one isn't good too. So we will take, and of course, white has a lots of problems because is underdeveloped and the pawn structure is completely broken. So in my opinion, this is completely playable for black. So talking about different lines, here after bishop f4 castle, we can see, for example, f3. I think probably most players will think about this move because the knight doesn't have enough squares. So because of that, we will play knight c5. This is probably the only move. And after b4, knight to e6. And looks like this game is superior for white, but no, this is an illusion because you will play on the abilities. Because after pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes, here bishop will take, and the white player will be super happy, and we will continue with knight c6. We are trying to take the bishop, so we won another tempo, because white will need to repeat the bishop. So after bishop c, we can play f6 to try to exchange and play on the queen side. So after the advances, for example, knight e5 takes, we are evaluating a superior position for black, even though white is winning by 1 point, because the knight will not go anywhere because he's on a black square. And talking about the development of the black's pieces and the abilities of white, this pawn on c4 and this pawn on a3 are very big problems for white. So an idea can be this one, and after knight takes, the rook will take the pawn because, well, the knight is controlling this square, and, well, king here, we can draw if we want quickly. So yes, we won't be able to win with violence, but we have equal endgame. So most openings have problems on specific variants. So this isn't different, but do you think this is dubious? I think not. I think this is completely playable. Well, let's go to our next variation, and the next variation is played with Queen C2. And in my opinion, this probably is the most complicated for white. And looking to the chess base percentage, white just wins 41%. It's very different from the other variants. So here, the idea, I will defend bishop to f5. Of course, we have another approaches too, but bishop f5 looks interesting. If you want, you can try to play f5. It's playable, but the ideas with bishop f5 are interesting because, of course, if white plays f3, f3 never is good for white because we will have always queen to h4. This kind of stuff loses. And of course, again, g3 is just a blunder because the knight can take. So this is completely won. So f3 is never playable for white in any variant. So talking about another approaches, of course, knight f3 will give equality because we can take with the queen. And look to the black's position. We've already developed a knight, a bishop, and the queen. And later we will play knight c, knight b4, castle queen side. So this is very dynamic. So this is beautiful for black. So another idea probably is the best for white is just to play the knight to c3 to try to create pressure to this knight. And yes, this is a critical line because here you will need to play quite well. We will take, this is my suggestion. I think you will not see this any place, just here. I will defend bishop takes pawn. It's complicated. It's a critical line, true, but we will have a lot of counterplay. So here the problem is that we are losing a piece, but it's completely playable. Why is that? Because after knight takes, we can play bishop check. Of course, the knight cannot go back because you will win the queen. And after, for example, bishop plays, because the queen is controlling the file, we will take the bishop. Again, the knight cannot go back because the bishop will take the queen. And after queen takes, we will continue with bishop takes knight. So we've won the piece back. After queen takes, king takes. This is the reason, because this is more complicated for black. Probably castle queen side is playable, and we can continue with king e7. And okay, we are losing by 1 point, and the difference between this variant and the other endgames that we've saw before is that we don't have so much counterplay. But this is a specific line, and talking about the evaluation of the fish says that white has 0.7. So it isn't the end of the world. So we will need to play for the draw. And yeah, this is already the 11th move, so I think most players will do different stuff. Nobody will play that, I think. But well, if this happens, I think probably they will continue with that, and you can pray for white to play this kind of stuff, because the bishop will be very bad. After, for example, bishop to e6, I don't know, f4 probably is an idea to try to win some space. You can play knight c6, and this kind of stuff is completely playable for black, because the pawns are overextended. So, of course, here enters different concepts. So the endgame concepts, the positional play. So we aren't talking about the opening, but well, talking about this position, I think you don't need to be afraid. For example, rook d8, we will want to fight for the open file, and we will try to create pressure to this pawn on e4. But this bishop, we don't want this bishop to enter the game because he will be annoying. So last variation. The last variation is with queen d5. And okay, queen d5 is probably the most interesting approach for white. And when I prepared this video, I was a lot of time thinking about what would I do here. And why is that? Because, well, when white plays queen d5, white is threatening to win the knight, and I don't enjoy very much knight c5. The computer said that this is normal, but I will defend f5. Why is that? Because when you play the Fajarowicz Gambit, you're playing a dreamer opening, so you want to play for the tricks, you want to create traps, you want to attack. So when you play knight c5, it isn't easy to attack. But if you play f5, again, don't forget, this kind of stuff never work because you're going to win material. And I think it isn't very normal, but one approach can be knight c3, but the game will be completely equal, because after bishop b4, bishop plays to d2, we can play c6, and this queen doesn't have enough squares. Of course, you're not going to win the queen because exists queen d4, but yeah, bishop c5, and you're playing for the tricks right now. So I think this looks more ambitious for black than knight c5. So this is interesting. About another approaches, of course, the pawn can take en passant, and after that we will take with the knight. And okay, in my opinion, you don't need to be afraid of that. Queen d3, d5, and after pawn takes, you're going to exchange everything. And again, in my opinion, this is equal. We are losing by 1 point, but this is completely equal. But I'm certain that you will be able to win everyone because of this plan. Because you want to play knight to b4, sorry, to try to give the double. And so most players, if they play this, of course, you're going to enter. And this is already complicated because you will create a lot of pressure on the queen side. So here you're already won. If your opponent is paranoid, he will play, for example, not knight f3 but a3. And after a3 we can continue normally with knight c6. Knight c6, and okay, now knight f3 because doesn't exist this plan, and we will continue with bishop g4. It's the most active square for this bishop. This bishop doesn't have enough squares to play, as you're seeing. So, for example, bishop d2, in my opinion, probably will happen. And after that, bishop e7, and okay, let's see. Knight c, and okay, let's continue normally with castle queenside. After knight takes, rook takes, bishop c, looks normal. You can continue with bishop f6, and looks not very normal, the approach of exchanging pieces when we are losing by 1 point. But our argument is that the white king is on the center, and we are leading on the development. So, for example, after bishop takes, pawn takes, e4 probably will happen by some way. We can continue with rook d7, and after bishop to e2, you can continue with just something like rook e7. And the thing is that, okay, this pawn is already a problem. Why is that? Because of f5. Here you're thinking, oh, okay, but what if white plays knight to d2? Yes, if this happens, you will create pressure on the open file, and don't forget this bishop is controlling this square. So probably f3 will happen by some way, but you will not play the bishop, you're going to play the knight. And again, I prefer the black game, because after pawn takes, rook takes on b2, and we are threatening to enter with the rook, and why not trying to enter with the knight too? So this is already superior for black. So even on this kind of variants, it's always complicated to play with the white. So, of course, we will need to think about the positional play. You will need to practice your endgames. But well, this is a chess game, so you cannot think that because of the opening you're going to win all the games on 20 moves. Sometimes we need to play the endgame, so it's important. So talking about another approach, I think this move can happen too. So because this is a check and because white will try to win the initiative. So of course, this is playable, but I prefer bishop e7 because we have the idea of knight c6. So for example, after knight f3, I think this can happen. Knight c6 and this queen will need to lose the tempo. So queen to g5, probably, I don't know, b5, I don't know what will I play. But well, for example, bishop to g5, we can, for example, play castle kingside, or if you want, you can try to play dynamic again. For example, d5, why not? If queen takes on g7, of course, everyone will say that you're completely mad, but if you win the game, you will be happy, don't forget. So we will continue with rook g8, and the thing is that you're developing your pieces. Yes, you're losing by 2 points, but yeah, nobody is perfect. So here we will continue with bishop c5, and everything is well. We are threatening to sacrifice the bishop on f2. For example, if knight takes, we sack, and if king takes, we will win material. So again, we are playing for the tricks. Of course, if white sees, can play e3, and okay, after that we can win material again with bishop to f8. Again, this queen has not very much squares. For example, queen f4 or queen h4. Probably queen f4 is more normal, and after that you will play rook g4. Again, we don't have squares. This isn't playable, neither these squares. So the only correct move is to take the rook. So after that, you're won. So in my opinion, this is completely, every one of these variations are completely playable for black. So I don't know if you enjoyed this Fajarowicz opening. This gambit is very aggressive. Today we saw several different traps. And if you enjoyed, don't forget, please like. This will be a very big help. And I need to know if you're enjoying the content or not. So I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, subscribe, please. And today I've created a different short about the blunders. If you want to see, please take a look. Because, well, the reaction of Kasparov is incredible. And what would you react to a blunder? I've already committed several blunders on my official classical games, and well, I think the poker face is always the best approach. But I don't know, what do you think? If you're still here, thank you very much for being until the end of the video. Tell me something on the comments, because I need to know who are you, and persons like you help a lot the channel to grow, and because of you I'm continuing to create content every day. So thank you a lot again, and tomorrow we will be here again to talk about chess. Thank you, and till tomorrow. Bye bye.